Welcome to Biblical Demand, and today our guest is Koukl, who is the founder and president of Stand to Reason. He is a professor in Christian apologetics at Biola University. He has debated Michael Shermer and Deepak Chopra. Also, as an author, he has written 7 books, including The Story of Reality, How the World Began, Tactics, a game plan for discussing your Christian convictions, and others. It's a joy to have you here, sir.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation, Rajat.
Great. So let's begin with your story. Tell us about yourself and how did you come to know Jesus?
Well, I was raised in a nominal Christian home. I was Roman Catholic, and so we went to church on Sundays and did some Catholic school and did all the things that were required of Catholicism. But when I became a teenager, I was asked a very important question. And that question was, do you really believe that your faith is true? And that stopped me in my tracks. I had to think about that. And I said, no, I don't. And I realized I had been doing what my family had been doing all my life. And I had even been arguing in favor of Roman Catholicism as a type of Christianity. But when I really thought about it, I was just doing what my parents had taught me to do and my culture had taught me to do. I wasn't thinking for myself. And when I realized this question, then I realized I didn't really believe it. And I said, no. It was such amazing revelation to me. No, I guess I really don't believe that stuff. And so then I embarked on a very worldly course. And I was a young man at that time. I was a teenager, a lot of things happening in the States in a counterculture. A lot of values were being changed. And to be honest, I did not want God in my life telling me how to live my life. All right. And so I went, probably, about 6 years. Embracing the world, living like the world, accepting the ideas of the culture that were developing then, and that didn't involve God, and especially when you're a young man discovering your world, the last thing you're interested in is religion and purity and holiness and right living and all that. The girls were there, kind of thing. And so, that was a big distraction for me. And, it turned out that my younger brother had become a Christian. Now, when I say become a Christian, what I mean is this. There is a difference between doing religious things and having a deep belief and conviction in the thing you're doing. And I just described that on my own life. I was doing the religious things, but it turned out I didn't really believe it. And as an adult, I was making now my decisions for myself. That happened with everybody in our family. Every single person, 5 children, mom and dad, 7 of us all rejected the religion that we were raised with. Okay, we were done with it. It was inconvenient. And we weren't convinced it was true. And it turned out, though, that my younger brother, Mark, he was just 2 years younger than me, ended up becoming a Christian. That is, somebody who really trusted in Jesus for forgiveness and had his life changed because of the Holy Spirit coming to live within him. And when I say trusting for forgiveness, this is not something I understood before, even though I was in a Christian denomination. And frankly, a lot of Christians in various denominations do not understand this, all right? What God offers every human being is forgiveness for every sin they have ever committed in their entire life, and also the sins they will commit. It's all cleaned. Now, some people might think, well, that means I can go on sinning. I said, if you think that way, then you haven't been converted, because converted means you have the Holy Spirit, okay? And you want to do what God wants you to do. So your desires change too. So what I'm saying here is something in a certain sense on the outside is changed. I realize that God forgives me of everything. And so I know that I'm going to heaven, not because I'm good and holy and all that, but because of what Jesus did for me. Complete forgiveness. But on the inside, there's a change. Now God is my Father, and I am his son in a way that wasn't the case before. And now that I'm part of his family, I want to please my Heavenly Father. And the Holy Spirit within me helps me to desire that and to do that. Okay? So this is important, not just in India, speaking to my Indian friends now through you, but even in the United States, where Christianity abounds, that doesn't mean that they all understand it. They're confused. And so what happened to my brother is he realized that there was real grace and forgiveness available. Not just once a week when you go to the confessional with the priest and you say your sins and he says, okay, I forgive you. And then the next 10 minutes later, you're looking at a girl and you realize, oh, now I'm a mess again. All right. It was real deep forgiveness. And so this was the message he began to communicate to me that I had never heard before. And over a period of time, even though I pushed back initially, and I was the only member of my family to go to college or to graduate from college. And so I thought I was too smart to believe that stuff. Okay. But my brother just continued to communicate this true message of the grace of God and forgiveness and the transformation of life I could have. And then in September of 1973, I was 23 years old. I was a student at UCLA at the time, and that's when I gave my life to Christ. And I decided to follow Jesus. No, I'm just making another distinction here. A lot of Christians will say, I received Christ, or I, prayed a prayer. Well, there's nothing wrong with the language. As long as people understand that when you receive Jesus or you pray a prayer to say, God, forgive me, I'm putting my trust in Jesus, or something like that, that's a door to a new world. That isn't the new world. That is the door to the new world. And what I mean by that is that sometimes people will pray this prayer and then they will walk away. Think, okay, now I have what some might call an insurance policy, Okay, God, now I have your insurance policy, leave me alone. Okay, a person like that is not a real Christian. They may think they are, but they're not because they haven't been converted. And so I like to talk about when I put my trust in Christ, I began to follow Jesus because a Christian is a follower of Jesus. And I think in the Indian tradition, you have very good examples of that, with swamis and avatars, types of individuals, and the people who identify themselves with that and follow along with them. Well, in a sense, it's the same kind of thing with Christianity. If we are not following Jesus, then how could we say we're a Christian? How could we say that our life has been transformed? All right. So I'm just making this clear because I think it's sometimes misunderstood. We are not adding Jesus to all the other gods. We are acknowledging that the other gods are false gods. Even the gods that I followed when I was a young man, sex and freedom and doing whatever I wanted to do and all this other stuff. I had different gods. I don't add Jesus to that. Jesus replaces that because Jesus is the true God. Okay. Now, when I did that in 1973 and I began to follow Jesus, my life completely changed. Obviously, I'm seeing the world differently. And then I became a part of a Christian community where I was taught the Bible and I was discipled. In other words, there was an older Christian man who took me under his wings, so to speak. And incidentally, if I use what sounds like an American statement, like take them under the wing or something. Sometimes they don't translate, they don't make any sense in another culture. Let me know and I'll try to word that. So I might use a baseball illustration, swinging for the fences. What does that mean? Oh, let me put it in other words. But in any way, he had taken me in as a son. And for 2.5 years, I was trained by him and other teachers. So this really helped my spiritual growth and helped me to realize what my life was all about. And that was that whether I earned a living at serving Christ like I do now, or not like I did for the first 20 years of my Christian life, I'm still to serve him and to use my gifts, spread the gospel, strengthen other Christians. Doesn't matter that I get paid for it. It turns out now it's my full-time job. But for the first 20 years of my Christian life, it wasn't really. Or maybe the first 15 years of my Christian life. And so it was a way of life for me. And that's the way it should be for anyone who has become a real Christian, as yourself. And I think you're still probably, don't know much about you, Rajat, but even as a layperson, if you're making your living some other way, you're probably not getting rich on the internet right now, doing podcasts. But you are still serving Christ with your life, even though you're not getting paid for it. And part of the reason I say this is because I have been told that the most well-known Christian name in India is Benny Hinn. And so there are people, excuse me, who are representing Christianity falsely. And Benny Hinn is one of them. And he's teaching that becoming a Christian is a way to get rich, like him. Well, he got rich because he fooled a lot of people. And but he's not a real Christian. And that isn't what Christianity is all about. You cannot read the New Testament, especially the life of Jesus, and come to that conclusion. It's about something entirely different. It's not about making a lot of money and getting famous. It's about humbling ourselves and following Jesus by serving him and others. So in different ways, this is what I've been doing for 48 years now. And it has not been easy. Jesus promised it would not be easy. And I live in America. If you live in a different culture with a different religion that is most popular, it's even more difficult, like in your country, where you have Islam and Hinduism and maybe a little Buddhism and others, other religious orders, but they are contrary, different from, and opposing Christianity and their theology, and sometimes the people do as well. And this is why it's so much more important for Christians in a country like that, which, by the way, the United States is becoming more like opposition. But it's so important to understand that we are following the person of Jesus and walking in his footsteps in obedience as we put our trust in him. It's not a matter of whether we're going to be forgiven or we're not trying to earn our way to heaven. We're trying to be faithful children because we have been given heaven already. So that's a little bit of my story.
Great. That's so wonderful to hear that being born in a Catholic family or being born in a Christian family doesn't make you a Christian.
That's right.
Right. So it's so great to hear that how God used other people, your brother and your teachers to develop, to strengthen those convictions and to shape your Christian worldview. And now you've been serving Christ from past 48 years. It's so wonderful. It's so inspiring to hear that. Praise God for that. So moving on to this next question. I watched your debate with Deepak Chopra back in 2005, right? And you emphasize that the faith should be supported with reasons and evidence. Okay, so the question is, why not on personal experiences, feelings, emotions, or insights? For example, during summers, I'm in a scorching heat and I'm sweating and I see a dense tree in a
Right.
distance. I run towards that and I find a very good rest there and my body's relaxed, my sweat is gone and I'm
Hmm.
refreshed. Now, because of that experience I'm having, I'm in awe of that tree that I would like to show my gratitude to that tree by worshiping it, right?
Right.
So what's wrong with that?
Well, there is a lot in this question, Rajat. And I can understand why this kind of question would be more meaningful in India than it is in the United States. Although there are a lot of people that have the same general idea in the United States, but they wouldn't talk about worshiping a tree. All right. That doesn't make any sense to them. Okay. But they will end up worshiping something else that gives them what they want. Okay. Now let me pause for a moment because I chose my words very carefully. They're going to worship something else that gives them what they want. Okay. Now let's go back to your illustration. I understand the circumstances you just described. Somebody's, hot, sweaty, uncomfortable. There's shade over there given by the tree. And when they go under the shade, they are comforted. All right. They feel better. They are refreshed and they are thankful. But to what are they thankful? Well, they're thankful to the tree. And because they're thankful to the tree, they want to worship the tree. Okay. Now I want you to think about this for a moment, and also those that are listening. If you wanted to write an important letter, very important, to your wife or to your children or to a friend or a government official, something important, but you had no pen, and I gave you a pen that allowed you to write whatever it is you want to write and accomplish that important goal in your life. Would you, okay, one question at a time here, very simply. Would you be thankful, Rajat? If I gave you the pen to do the
Of course.
job, you would be thankful.
True.
Okay, good. Here's the key question. To whom or what would you be thankful? I gave
Because,
you the pen.
yeah.
You took the pen and write it down.
Because I needed it most at that time.
That's why you would be thankful. But who would you thank?
I
What
would
would you think?
I would thank you who gave me the pen.
Why would you thank me? I did not write the thing. You wrote it with the pen. Why don't you thank the pen? And the answer is, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I thank the pen? The pen didn't do anything. I did something with the pen, that pen given to me by another person. All right. So I'm just thinking about gratitude now and being thankful. All right. When you think about it, in our normal life, when we're thankful, we are thankful to people or to persons who do something for us. All right. Even if I say I'm thankful that I have a house, well, that doesn't make any sense by itself, because thankfulness is always between persons. So there's something else that's responsible for the house or my ability to purchase a house that I'm thankful to. And so we have a Thanksgiving Day every year in the States. Maybe you have something like that. I don't know. In other cultures have something similar. But in this case, we are being thankful. And I talked about this on my own radio show. I said, you can't just be thankful and that's it. You are always thankful for something, like a pen, and to someone for providing the thing you're thankful for. Thanks is always given to someone. That's what makes sense. And this is one reason when I was talking with, I was thinking about something the atheist Michael Shermer said at Thanksgiving. He said, I'm just thankful. I'm not thankful to anybody, like to God. I don't believe in God. Well, then your thanks doesn't make any sense, because thanks doesn't just exist by itself. It's like between people. So what I gave a very clear illustration. Since I give you the pen, you're thankful for the pen, but you are thankful to me who provided the pen. All right. Now let's go back to the tree. What did the tree provide? Shade and comfort. But the tree didn't give that to you. It's just what was there because the tree was there. All right. You are thankful for the shade and the comfort, but the thankfulness is not to the tree because the tree didn't do anything more than the pen does when you use it to write. The shade was always there. And by the way, why thank the tree instead of the shade? Or forget about the tree and the shade. What really mattered is that it was cool. Why not worship the coolness? Well, you might say, well, the coolness is there because of the tree. Yes, but the tree is there because of something else. Just like the pen. You might say, I'm not going to thank the ink, but I'm not going to thank the pen. I'm going to thank the one who gave it. And so this is why in the Bible talks about this. When we see the things in the world that bring benefit to us, we do not thank the thing. We thank the one who gave the thing. All right? And who gave us the tree, who gave us the world to enjoy. God, a person, made those things, and this is why we can be thankful to them. Okay? So I'm just focusing right now. I have more to say, and I don't know if you want to jump in on this, but I have more to say about this because now I'm just talking about the gratitude or thankfulness. I haven't talked about the worship part or the experience part, and these are three different things. So on the one hand, it seems odd to thank a thing. That just seems odd. It seems more proper to thank the one who gave you the thing. And if you feel thankful for a tree, there must be somebody who gave you the tree that you can thank. Okay, so that seems to me common sense, just thinking about it, all right? The second thing is that in your question, you said not just be thankful or thank, but to worship. All right. Now, in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, one of the prophets is talking about that very thing. And he's talking about worshiping trees. In this case, a piece of a tree. And he says, look, think about it. He says to the people, you have a tree, and then you cut the tree down, and you take parts of that tree, and you burn it in a fire to cook your food, keep you warm. You take another part of the same tree, and you carve something into it, and then you set it up, and you bow down and worship it. This thing that you just made has eyes, but it can't see. It has ears, but it can't hear. It has a mouth, you carved it in there, but the mouth can't speak. And then then he's poking fun at the people who do this, and he says, and those who do this are like them. They have eyes, but they're not seeing. They have ears, but they're not hearing. They have mouths, they're not speaking. In other words, they are deaf and dumb and blind to the truth of what they're doing. They're just taking a hunk of wood and pretending it's a god. And they pretend it's a god because it did something for them. It gave them shade, made a fire. But the point of the prophet is that this is just a thing. Worship is for someone greater than yourself and greater than everything else. It is not for something that simply gives you pleasure. Oh, the tree gave me pleasure. I'm going to worship this. All right. So I'm going to give another illustration so people can see the point. because I think to many who are listening, this illustration you offer with the tree makes sense, but I'm going to apply the same rule to something else. All right. And it's going to be a little extreme, but I think you'll see the parallel. Because remember, the rule that we're using in this case is, this brought me pleasure, so I am going to be thankful for it and worship it. Okay, take a prostitute. A man goes to a prostitute. All right. Well, most people don't think very highly of prostitutes because they sell their body in a way that most people think they shouldn't, even when they go to a prostitute themselves. They realize, I'm not going to tell anybody, I don't want anybody to find out, because they realize it's not really good. But the prostitute gives them pleasure. I suspect the prostitute can give more pleasure than a shady tree. Would they worship the prostitute? That makes no sense. The same pleasure is there, but you realize, no, I'm not going to worship a prostitute. Because a prostitute isn't worthy of worship. The thing that's worthy of worship is not something that just gives us pleasure, but something that's huge, big, grand, and wonderful, and morally pure. This is why Christians worship God, because He's the greatest being. He's above all. It's not a bunch of gods and it's just, okay, they're all kind of equals fighting with each other. No, He's above all, and He's morally pure. He isn't having sex Himself with prostitutes. And some of gods in a God system, a polytheistic system, they do nasty things. So why would you worship something that's nasty? Oh, I know why you'd want to do that, because you're trying to trick it so it does what you want it to do. Okay? You do incense and you do things like that, not because you really admire it, but because you're trying to manipulate it. All right. So I'm just trying to observe what's actually going on here and to get your listeners to think about this. When you give gratitude to a person for something. You don't give gratitude to the thing. Okay. And you don't worship the thing. If you're worshiping the thing that gives pleasure, then there are all kinds of really strange things you should be worshiping. You should be worshiping your tandoori chicken or whatever, you might have if you like the taste of that. You should be worshiping the prostitute. You should be worshiping everything that gets pleasure. And then what happens is now you're worshiping pleasure. By the way, there are people in the world that get pleasure from tormenting other human beings. They do. Now, we think it's strange, but if we're worshiping pleasure, then why wouldn't we worship those people who did that? Why wouldn't we worship people who torture? Well, everybody realizes that doesn't seem right, but it does follow the rule that you described with the tree. Now, the tree seems, that's so sweet. I just go under the tree. I feel, I think, and I'm going to worship the tree. Okay. But if that's the rule, the basic reason you're worshiping the tree is because you got some pleasure from something about the tree, then that should apply to a bunch of other things too. And it starts to look a little crazy. What I'm suggesting is that your feeling of being thankful for the shade is a good thing. And you ought to thank for the good thing, but you don't thank the thing. You don't thank the tree, you don't thank the shade, you don't thank the pleasure. You thank the one who made it possible. And this actually, in my view, is an argument for God. Because when we think about gratitude and what it is, it requires a person to whom we're thankful, or it doesn't make any sense. And if we're thankful for a lot of things in the natural world, there must be a person who placed those things there. And there is a person who placed those things there, and that's God. So now I've talked about gratitude and I've talked about worship, but I want to say something about experience, because what you had asked me about with Deepak Chopra, and I suspect many people in India know who Deepak Chopra is. He is a very, 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 very rich. Well, it's hard to describe his religion, but it's similar to Hinduism. It trades a lot on Hinduism, but I don't know if it's strictly Hinduism. In any event, what I said in my debate with him as I talked about the importance of reason and evidence as opposed to experience. That's the first thing you asked me in my question. Okay. I think experience is really important and is really valuable. All right. Experience being what we, I'm trying to think of another word for experience. I can't think of one. So what we experience and that's something that's often enjoyable. Sometimes it's not enjoyable, our experiences, but whatever the experience is supposed to tell us the truth. All right. Now, I think that when your viewers think about this, they realize it's obvious that experience doesn't always tell them the truth. It's just absolutely obvious. All right. And let's just go back to sexual illustration, not to be, rude here, but I think it's a very powerful illustration. Men especially have very strong sexual desires, even for people they're not married to. It's not surprising. Okay. Their desire is for someone that they have promised not, to go to. They promised their wife. Okay. But their feelings are driving them towards that other woman. Okay. Well, if feelings are what are most important, then you go and have this thing with this other woman. But what ends up happening? Lots of times this is very destructive. It's destructive in the person's individual life, in his marriage. It's destructive for his children. Wow, wait a minute. I thought that feelings were supposed to be your guide to truth. Then why does following our feelings lots of times lead to disaster? And the answer is because feelings are not an adequate guide to truth. All right. Another illustration. You look at these berries in the field. Oh, they look so good. They're full and red and luscious and juicy. They look great for food. Okay. So you take this thing and you put it in your mouth and you say, wow, it tastes great. So their eyes are satisfied. Your mouth is satisfied. You swallow it and in a half hour you're dead. Because the juicy, tasty berries were poison. Okay? So there's another example where you can't just follow your feelings, because feelings don't always tell you what's good or true. All right? They mislead. So this is the way I like to put it. Feelings do make life delicious, and the feelings experienced in the right circumstances. So if I were to make love to my wife and enjoy that, then that's a right circumstance, and that's a wonderful thing. It's delicious. All right. If I did it with another woman, it may feel good, but it's not a right thing. And later on, it turns bitter. All right. So feelings do make life delicious. And I think God intended that to be the case, which is why he gave us so many feelings and tastes and wonderful things to enjoy. Thank you, God, for that. I don't thank the thing. I thank God. All right. However, thinking, reason makes life safe. Feelings make life delicious. Reason makes life safe. Where do we get reason? From God. We got feelings from God. We got reason from God. We got feelings so we can enjoy things. Thank you, God. We got reason from God so that we can figure out which things that we might enjoy are good and which things are not good. And therefore, using reason, we keep safe. Okay. Now, I've used illustrations that just have to do with just have to do with kind of worldly things, earthly things. But the fact is, when it comes to spiritual things, these are so much more important. Same rules apply, but the spiritual things are so much more important. So how do I know God? Or even if there is a God, do I go by my feelings? Well, there is a place for feelings, but they're not a reliable guide, and not a reliable guide. Because if you believe in God and then somebody close to you dies, you feel bad and then say there is no God. Well, think about this. It ought to be obvious that if God actually exists, he doesn't disappear when you get sad or someone close to you dies. Guess what? Everyone close to you is going to die because everybody's going to die. So when you think about this, this isn't a good reason to get rid of God, but it's an emotional reason if people are following their emotions. Okay. And so basically, broadly, what I'm suggesting here with regards to experience is even though experience is important and gives us good things, and even yours and my experience with God is a good thing to talk about with people. We've been doing that already. Paul the Apostle in the book of Acts, which is an account of the early church, he talks about his conversion in his experience, but he bases all of his experience on truth. And he reasons for the truth to explain why his experience is a truthful experience, a good experience, and not a deceptive or bad experience. So that's how I would answer this question, which I deeply respect, and I understand that many people that are watching are going to be concerned about. If we worship the thing rather, or give thanks to the thing rather than the one who made the thing, then we are wasting our time. It might feel good in the moment, but in the long run, that God who made all these things we should be thankful for, we are going to stand in front of when we die. We are not going to get another chance, reincarnation, and another and another and another and another. No, when we die, we're done with our human life, this life, and then we stand before God, and then we have to account for the life we gave. And if we have not been forgiven for all of the wrong things we know we have done, then we have to be punished for them. And this is why forgiveness through Jesus is so absolutely important.
Wow, that's wonderful. Wonderful to hear you explain, and you give a distinction very nicely between the experience, gratitude, and the worship. And you emphasize that we should not be thankful to the creation, but to the creator, right? And yeah, and also you beautifully talked about the experiences that, as Paul did, the experiences are based on the truth, and truth is based on the reasons. That's how the experiences become truth, right?
Yes, this is how we can distinguish whether the experiences are actually good, morally good, and they tell us the truth about the nature of the universe. And we have to use our reason to do that.
Wow, that's wonderful, wonderful. And so since we have numerous religions like all over the world, including monotheism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam are monotheism.
Right.
Then polytheism, Hinduism is a polytheism. Then atheism is there now, and animism. And there's so many types of religion all over the world. And the followers of such religions claim that their religion is true.
Right.
Right. So the question is how to test your religion for truth.
Okay. Well, I actually have a fairly simple test, and it's one that I have been using for a long, long time, many, many years of my Christian life, though I haven't thought about it this way until my daughter, when she was 8 years old, asked me a question. And what she asked was, Papa, how do we know that God is true, is the way she put it. She's 8. Now, she had already been baptized, so she believed the things that we believed as a family, but she wanted to know now, not the what, but the why. Why do we think that what we believe is true? And now I have to explain this. I have to say something. I don't know what to, I'm thinking about it, basically, because even though I do things like this with you, with other adults, now I'm talking to my daughter and I have to say something that she can comprehend. And so as I thought of it, all of a sudden this idea came to mind, and I said it to her. And I said, honey, the reason that we believe that God is true, in other words, that God exists and that he's like the God that Christianity describes, is because he's the best explanation for the way things are. It's because he's the best explanation for the way things are. Now, I want to just step out of religion for a moment and have your viewers think about things. We all go through our days trying to make sense of our world. We walk into the room and there's a mess. What happened? Who messed up the living room or something? I cleaned it last night and now it's a mess. Well, it could be that the children came in there and ate a bunch of food and left the dishes. It could be that if you have cats like we do, they got in a fight and ran all over and knocked things over. How are you going to know which is which? Well, you look at the room and you see what the room looks like and you judge, you conclude what might have caused it. What is the best explanation for what I just found? I mean, it's a very simple illustration, but we do this all the time. Okay, my computer is not working. Why not? Better check some things out. Well, somebody says, it's because it's not plugged in. Yes, it's plugged in. Look, I can see. That's not a good explanation. And then you start thinking, oh, here's a wire that's not connected properly, or my program needs to be updated or something. And then you realize, oh, I can see it says, please update. So now you have a reason that is the best explanation for why your computer's not working, and you address the reason, and now you're moving ahead. Okay, so what I'm trying to describe is a very natural process that we go through in thinking that can be applied to this question. Okay, so you mentioned atheism, for example. Most atheists do not believe in anything that's not physical. So this physical world that we can experience with our senses, okay, is the only thing that's real. And so an atheist can say, well, I don't see God. I don't hear God. I don't taste him, touch him, smell him. So there is no God. Okay. They're limiting their experience to this physical world. Okay. I understand that. All right. But there's something else that atheists say all the time. And they complain one reason they don't believe in God is because there is no evil. Is because of the problem of evil. All right. But what they're not realizing, what they don't think about, is that in order for there to be a problem of evil, that is, people who do bad things, there has to be a moral standard or scoring system for what's good and what's bad. Okay, now we all know this, Here, it's wrong to hurt people, but it's right to be kind to people, generally speaking. Okay, well, that's a standard. Most of us agree with that. But here's my question. Where is that standard? Well, it's not physical. It's not made up of molecules. And according to the atheist, if it's not made up of molecules or something physical, it's not real. So if you're going to be an atheist, there can't be non-physical things like morality in the sense we're talking about it. There can't be moral obligations like that. So therefore, if there are no standards that exist outside, then there can't be breaking the standard, which is evil. Now, some of your listeners may be following me in this. I think this is a little bit more of a complex notion. But if you are playing a game that has no rules, then you can't break the rules. It's got to have rules. So the atheist says we're in the game of life and people are breaking the rules. That's the problem of evil. And so I say, where are the rules? You're an atheist, right? Of course. You just believe in physical things, right? Where are the rules? Rules aren't physical things. All right? So for the atheist, there cannot be a problem of evil. Now, I'm not just pointing out something that is like a contradiction for atheists that they have to deal with. To me, this is one of the reasons I cannot be an atheist. In other words, I can't even will myself to choose to be an atheist because I know better. There is something that everyone knows, and it doesn't matter when they lived or where they lived. So I can speak confidently to all of your listeners, even though we're half a world away. It's 10 and 11 in the morning almost here. For me, it's after midnight for you. All right? We all know this. Something is wrong with the world. Something is wrong with the world. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And most of us have this idea that the thing that's wrong with the world has something to do with the thing that's wrong with us. The world is broken, but we're broken too. So what is religion trying to do? Religion is trying to answer that question. What is wrong with the world and how do you fix it? So do other theologies or philosophies too, but instead they all have different answers. Okay? So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of going through a very simple process of elimination. Atheism has one answer, Hinduism has an answer, Buddhism has an answer, and right on down the line, the major religions. Islam has an answer about that. Okay? But when you think about atheism, if everyone knows that something's wrong with the world, atheism has to say, nope, there's nothing wrong with the world, because there's no scoring system. It just is. It's just molecules clashing. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's not moral, it's not immoral, it just is. That's what you get from atheism. But if I were to be an atheist, I'd have to say there is no evil in the world, and it's really obvious that the world is filled with evil, so atheism must be false. It's not the best explanation for the way things are. And incidentally, this is not tricky. This isn't like, oh, that's so complicated. Sometimes it's a little hard to understand the concept, but the basic thing is very obvious. If you're an atheist, nothing can be wrong. Everything just is. But lots of things are wrong. So therefore, atheism must not be correct. It isn't the best explanation. All right? Some form of theism where God sets a standard for everything that gets broken to create the problem of evil, that's a better explanation. So I'm sticking with Christian theism over atheism because atheism doesn't make sense of the way the world actually is. Okay, now I'm going to pause for a moment and make a point here, Rajan. And that is, notice that the way I'm making my assessment is I'm not going inside of me. I'm not thinking what I like. I'm not thinking about what I want to be the case. I'm not thinking about what I wish. I'm not thinking about what I imagine. I'm not looking at anything inside of me. I'm looking at the world. I'm looking out there because I want an explanation of the whole thing, not just my feelings. I don't want to just go with my feelings. I want to know why is the world here? Why is there a problem of evil? What's wrong with me? How do I fix it? Very basic problems, but I'm not talking about what's inside of me. I'm talking about what's outside. Okay? And there's going to be an answer to that. Whether we can find it or not, that's another question. We're getting closer to the answer to that. It seems to me one answer is atheism, and that's clearly false because it doesn't match the world. Okay. So that's one step. But there's another step. So I'm just going to make another application of this idea. Atheism thinks that there's nothing immaterial that's real, only material things. There is a worldview that says material things are not real, only an immaterial thing is real. Okay? Now I see your smile there because you know this is a very popular idea in India. Okay? That the world is Maya, it's an illusion, and there's only one thing that exists, and that is God in an impersonal fashion. Okay. Well, that's a respectable belief. But the question is, does it match the world? Because if there are no individual things and all distinctions are Maya, this is like Vedantic Hinduism, as I understand it, and the only real thing is God, Brahma rather, in an impersonal form, no distinctions. That's why they say Brahman, Atman is Brahman and Brahman is Atman. Okay, they're all the same. There's no differences. Then there cannot be, on that view, a difference between good and evil. Even the difference between good and evil is ultimately part of the illusion, Maya. Well, now you've got a totally different way of seeing the world than atheism. Atheist says there is no mind, it's all matter. And this view, monism, says there is no matter, it's all mind. And the mind is undivided. Well, they have the same problem atheism does. Because if there is no distinctions, no divisions, there can't be a distinction between what is good and what is evil. So therefore, there can't be good or evil. There is only one mind, undivided. But wait a minute. We all know that must be false, because we all know that there is real evil in the world. And so for the same reason I reject atheism as not a good explanation of the world, I also reject Eastern forms of monism, Hinduism. Not all Hinduism is exactly like that. There are variations, but this is the main thing. I reject that too. It can't be true. I know better. We all know better when we think about it. Evil is real. Now, guess what? Christianity acknowledges that evil is real. And it tells where it came from. It came from human beings disobeying God. Well, that makes sense. And they're still doing it. That's why we still have evil. Okay? So you asked me, how do you test a religion for truth? And what I'm demonstrating here as best I can is that one way to do that is to take our religious views and match them to the world, because the religion is supposed to tell us why the world is the way it is and what the world is like outside of us. Okay, let's take a look. Well, wait, that doesn't work. Atheism doesn't work because it can't make sense of evil. But Eastern monism can't work either because that can't make sense of evil either. So I can, just on those grounds, I can conclude. Remember, we're using reason now because it keeps us safe. It tells us what's true. I can conclude those other two worldviews are not accurate. Now, that leaves me with some more, and there are more steps like this you can take. I know the universe came into existence sometime in the past. How long ago is a matter of debate, but every scientist now, for very good reason, believes the universe came into being. They call it the Big Bang. All right. Well, look at bangs don't bang themselves. My daughter said, if I bang my head on the table, then I'm one who banged it. So who banged the Big Bang? That's a good question. The Big Bang needs a banger. Okay. And so this is another argument against atheism. Common sense says that a person acted, not a physical person. A person acted to create the physical realm. So now what you have left, if that's reasonable, is you've got whatever the details of the truth of the world are, the basis is an individual personal God. Okay? And that leaves you basically with three big religions. There's a couple of smaller ones. But three big religions that teach that. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So this is a way of trimming it down. Okay? And it must be an individual. Any religion, excuse me, that does not teach an individual God, then isn't adequate to explain the world as we know. So this, again, I'm just thinking about things. And then you could look at the person of Jesus and the history of Jesus and see if Jesus rose from the dead. Well, that changes everything. If a man can raise himself from the dead in such a public fashion that not only do hundreds of people actually see them, but many of those people are willing to die a martyr's death based on the truth of what they saw. And by the way, we have many Muslims who have become Christians who are in the same circumstance. They have a supernatural revelation from God, and they are so convinced it's true, they're willing to become Christians in non-Christian or Muslim environments where their lives are at risk and sometimes lost. But that shows the strength of the conviction of the truth of what they're giving their life for. Now, of course, Muslims have died for Islam. We know that. Famously, suicide bombers. This is why the rational part is also part of it. It's not just the conviction, the strength of the conviction. But remember that the early Christians, though, they were willing to die because they really believed that Jesus came out of the grave, and the grave was empty. There was no body there. And their lives were transformed. So this becomes powerful evidence that Jesus is the God who made everything, which is what Christianity actually teaches. So there is a little tutorial from my perspective about how one can go about the process of assessing whether or not a religious view is true.
Wonderful. That's great to hear that how to test your religion for truth is that you see the actual world and see your beliefs or your religion, how it justifies, how it solves the problem of evil. But only after all of the world religions, we find Christian theism is the only coherent with the actual world, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why it is true, because the life of Jesus and the works of Jesus, the person of Jesus and the person of Jesus has made it clear that how the world is. And
let me say something about animism just for a quick moment, if I could, because you mentioned that as a religion. Animism is it's not really, in my view, worship of spirits. Okay, it's really a religion that acknowledges the reality of spiritual powers, which Christianity does also. But the people think they can manipulate the spirits. And so I lived in Thailand for a while, for 7 months, and that animism is very big in Thailand, even though it's a Buddhist nation. And so people think if they give their children nicknames, like if they call their children, they nickname their child dog, well, no spirit's going to want a dog. And so they won't bother the child. Or they'll wear keys around their wrists or on their neck, or they'll have these. So these are all attempts to manipulate the spirits, okay? But it's not strict. It is a worldview, but it's not strictly speaking worship, because they're not really worshiping. They are simply trying to manipulate the spirits, all right? Now, if Christianity is true, well, certainly there are spirits, but you cannot manipulate them. They're way too powerful. There's only one that can save you from those evil spirits, and that is the perfect Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God. Jesus is the only one filled with the Spirit who defeated all those evil spirits, and in him only is there real protection.
Amen. True. That's true. And I want to ask that, since we were talking about how to test your religion for truth, now we have the terms like sin, salvation, redemption, sanctification, righteousness, and other theological terms which mostly Christian use, right? Christian use to justify their worldview, to justify their Christian worldview. And
I think it's more to explain their Christian worldview, not to justify. It isn't reasons for it. It is once we get into that world, then we have to look at what does the Bible teach about the the smaller things, the particulars. And so we use words like you just used to describe it, not to justify it.
Yeah, to explain the Christian worldview or to
Correct.
describe the Christian worldview, along with this statement, Jesus is the only way to heaven. Now, when Christian make this claim, that means they are indirectly saying that all other ways are false. So what does it actually mean when Christian says, or the Bible says, that Jesus is the only way to heaven?
Right. Let me start by making this clarification. There's a reason that Christians say this, actually two reasons, but it's because Jesus said it. All right. Jesus is the author of that idea. In fact, I have a little booklet right here. And it's very thin, but it says Jesus, the only way, 100 verses. There are actually, I found more than 100 verses in the New Testament, many of them in the Gospels coming from Jesus, and many of them from those people who Jesus personally trained to follow after him. They said the same thing, okay? So Jesus is the one who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me, okay? That's maybe the most famous line from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, of Jesus, but he says it many other places, and it's obvious given his whole teaching. He comes down as the Savior to rescue the world. And this brings us to the second reason. So I'm giving you the reasons right now. I'm not necessarily defending them. If you think Jesus is pretty smart, and I think most religious Hindus especially think Jesus is pretty cool. He's good. They revere him. They add him to their list of gods oftentimes. All right. I was in Madras for a few weeks, and, you take the little tuk-tuk driver, the cabbie thing, and they have pictures of gods, they're on their vehicle, and there's Jesus. So they add them to it. Well, this would not make Jesus happy, because in his mind, he's not one of the others. He's all by himself. And actually, he says this, all that came before me are thieves and robbers. Okay. Strong statement. Okay. So, the question then is, why would Jesus say this? If Jesus is to be revered, then we ought to look at what he says. And well, Jesus is the one who said this. Okay. It's not Christians who are being nasty. Jesus said it. Okay. Why did he say it? And the simplest answer that I can give is that he's the only one who solved the problem. He's the only one who solved the problem. Now, remember I mentioned that different worldviews have different ways of describing what the problem is and therefore how to solve the problem. But of course, they can't all be right because they have different ideas about the world. The world is one way. It's not a bunch of ways. Okay. So if there is a God, he is either a personal God, like the Muslims might say, or he is not a personal God, like the Hindus say, but he can't be both. When you die, maybe you go to heaven or hell, or maybe you get reincarnated, but you can't do them both. The point I'm making here is they can't both be true because they compete with each other. They have different opposing ideas. So it's not really meant to be rude to say that all these other religions must be false. Frankly, these other religions should say the same thing about all the other religions, including Christianity. If there's a few exceptions, but most of them say Islam. Our view of reality is correct. Other people are false. What does the Buddha say? His view is correct. Therefore, the other people must be false. It isn't just Christians that are saying this. Everybody's saying this. Everybody's making this claim because it makes sense. They can't all be right. Now, they can all be wrong, but they cannot all be right. And that's not bigotry. That's simple math. Mathematics. It doesn't work out that way. Okay. So, then so the idea that one religion is right is common sense. And most people in other religions think that's true. They think their view is correct. All right. So Christians aren't saying anything different than most other religions are saying. And Christians are only saying what Jesus himself said. Okay. But the next point I've already mentioned, why? It's because he solved the problem. Now, what does Christianity teach about the problem? What does the Bible teach about the problem? Well, the problem is sin. What's sin? We already talked about it in a sense. Evil in the world done by people. When people do evil things, we know they should be punished. This is why we have prisons and the like. Okay? People who do bad things ought to be punished. People pretty much know that. Okay? And so I asked them that question. They say, yeah, they should be punished. And I said, here's another question. Have you ever done any bad things? Now it's personal, right? And they answer, yes. Why did they answer yes? Because they have done bad things. All of us have. I have too. So we believe that people who do bad things ought to be punished and that we've done bad things. We already know this. We don't need a Bible to tell us that. But the Bible does tell us that. It affirms what we already know. Okay? So this brings up another point. Jesus, what does he do? He has made it possible for us to be forgiven rather than punished. He has made it possible for us to be forgiven rather than punished. Well, what has he done to make it possible? He took the punishment on himself. He took the punishment on himself when he died on the cross. And the punishment wasn't that coming from other human beings that crucified him. That was bad. But the punishment actually came from God the Father, who took the anger he has towards you and I for our sins, and he placed it on Jesus and punished Jesus instead. Okay. So what this means in very simple terms is when we face God, actually in the final judgment after we die, it will be Jesus. When we face final judgment, either Jesus will pay for our sins because we put our trust in him in his life, like you and I have. We talked about that. Or we pay ourselves. Either Jesus pays or we pay. Somebody's got to pay. Jesus can do it for us and rescue us, or we say no, and then we get punished for our own sins. And that punishment is banishment from God in a place of terrible agony because we have sinned. In fact, God has kept a record of our sins. That's there at the end judgment. He opens the book. There it is. We're not getting away with anything. God knows every single thing we've ever done wrong. And that's what we're going to see on that judgment day. And if Jesus doesn't save us, no one can. That's why Jesus is the only way. He paid the price for us. Either he pays or we pay.
That's true. Wonderful. That's why Jesus is the only way, because he's the one who can save us from the wrath of God. And no other deity or any other god, small God, has made this distinction or made this claim that they can save. Right?
That's right.
So moving on to the last question, which I usually ask every guest, that what advice would you give to the young Christians, those who are in this internet age, are influenced by culture, philosophies, and other worldviews?
Well, in a certain sense, there is nothing different about this age than any other age, except for the internet. Notice how you asked the question, what advice would you give Christian? I'm just going to drop internet for a moment, who are influenced by culture, philosophies, and other worldviews. Well, that happened in the first century and every century since then. There are cultural pressures. There are other philosophies. There are competing worldviews. All right. And so Christian youth are facing exactly the same general kinds of things that they faced in the past. Okay. But now you got the internet. So what is the internet? It's just a means of communication. It's a powerful one, but it's just a means of communication. So in the first century, you had writing or spoken word. It's pretty much all you had. Now you have a lot more writing, and you have ways, and you have videos, and you have ways that this can be communicated. So on the one hand, I don't want young people to feel like this is a whole different world than anybody else has faced, because in the most elementary way, it's not different. In the most elementary way, it's precisely the same. We have competing philosophies, competing worldviews. We have a culture that is pressing in on us. In this culture, though, it has the means of pressing in on us much more aggressively than other cultures have had. And the means are these means of communication that we have, like we're using right now. You are on the other side of the world, and I'm looking right at your lovely face, and you at mine, okay? In real time. Look, at 50 years ago, no one would have even imagined such a thing were possible. And within my lifetime, right? When I was in college, no one would have imagined this kind of thing. Actually, before that, there was a comic book character that would show up in the newspapers even before I was born. His name was Dick Tracy. And Dick Tracy used to have a phone on his wrist that he could talk into and talk to different people with. His phone, his watch phone, right? And, this was like science fiction. Now we have phones like that. You can talk into your phone, and you can talk to other people, or you can talk. I'm thinking your wristwatch, what's on your wrist. We also have our iPhones, of course, but this is a separate device. But now we even have wrist watches that you can do that to. So now we are living in a period where we have tremendous technology, okay? And so ideas are flooding in much more aggressively than they ever had. And the ones who control most of all of that are not Christians. And they are pumping in different worldviews very aggressively that look very persuasive. Now, of course, we can use it. We're doing it now. We're using the technology to communicate the truth. But this is the hard part, finding out what the truth is. And a lot of these cultural philosophies are there to manipulate people's feelings in different ways, to believe something that's false. Incidentally, even there are Christians, I mentioned Benny Hinn, who will manipulate feelings to believe something false, a false Christianity. And this is why we've come full circle now. We're back to this question about rationality and evidence versus feelings and experience. Okay? The rest of the culture right now is using these powerful mediums, the internet, for example, to deeply influence people largely through their feelings. Now, some might say, well, wait a minute, they're trying to reason with us, and they're given reasons. But if you listen carefully to the language is, well, we would say in America, we would say the language is loaded. That means it's a kind of a rhetoric. It's kind of deceptive. All right. So just going back to last century, when the Germans wanted to kill all of the Jews, they didn't call it Jewish genocide. They called it the final solution. Jewish genocide sounds terrible. Final solution? Oh, that's great. Let's solve a problem. So this is where language is used to manipulate feelings, and people then end up going with the feelings even when it sounds a little bit like the other side is reasoning. Okay? And so how do you deal with that? Well, you just learn. First, you learn what the truth is. And you mentioned a book that I'd written in the past, and I don't know if it's, maybe it's available in India. I mean, Amazon's everywhere, it seems like. And that's called The Story of Reality. And the subtitle is How the World Began, How It Ends, and Everything Important That Happens in Between. Now, I'm not the only one who's written a book like this. C.S. Lewis has written a wonderful book called Mere Christianity. But the idea of my work and Lewis's and others like it is to provide an accurate view of the foundation of Christianity so we can really get a picture of what it is and why it is true. So I have that in that book, simply called The Story of Reality. But however the young Christian gets it, they need to get a foundation built of what is true. And they need to get that from reliable sources, and that's not Benny Hinn, okay, or anyone like him, all right? I know that many Hindu avatars or teachers, they think Jesus is great, and they talk about Jesus all the time. I promise you, these people have never read Jesus. They have not been students of Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, which are the biographies of Jesus written by those people who are close to Jesus. Because you cannot come up with this other theology if you read what Jesus actually taught. So that's what a new Christian needs to learn. The most important thing a young Christian can learn is Christianity. Mm-hmm. Once you have a very solid grasp of real, true, historic Christianity, then you start learning more and more the reasons why we can trust that Jesus rose from the dead, or that God created the world, or that a whole host of other things that have to do with the Christian worldview. But in my view, it's first things first. If we are going to defend the faith, we better be clear on the faith we are defending.
Correct.
Okay, and get that right first. And that's the foundation. That is the foundation.
I think that's a very good advice, that first let's read what we are believing. Let's, get deeper into the faith, and instead of believing whatever is in front of our eyes, whether it's because of internet or some magazine or the books.
Right. Rajat, what I do in the book, The Story of Reality, is I actually break those into 5 separate categories to make it easy. So there are particular things about God and man and Jesus, because lots of different ideas about Jesus, but only one biblical idea. Okay? Jesus. Then the cross, I mentioned the cross, something happened on the cross, and then resurrection. And here I mean the final resurrection. So you have the beginning when God made everything, and then you have the final resurrection where people are raised from the dead and stand before that throne of judgment. And one of two things will happen there, either perfect justice or perfect mercy. Perfect justice is punishment for everything you've ever done wrong, and God misses nothing. Or perfect mercy, which is forgiveness for everything we've ever done wrong, and God misses nothing. So I just want to commend, if people have access to it, that book. And by the way, on our own website, we have free courses that are easy to go through. And one of those courses is on the story of reality. So you can get that. And there's little testing devices, but really, I mean, the classes are like 6 classes or maybe 7. I don't know. And each class is maybe 15 minutes long. It's not hard, but it does communicate those basics that are in that book. And there are other websites that do that as well. If people are interested in Stand to Reason's website, it's very simple. Stand to Reason, STR, that's the acronym, str.org, str.org. And there are just literally thousands of articles and videos that deal with all kinds of different things. My own radio show is there, the podcast. We have actually multiple podcasts, so people can listen to that if they want. But getting that foundation is absolutely critical. And those 5 things, God, man, Jesus, cross, resurrection, I think is a good way of understanding how the whole thing fits together.
Wow, wonderful. That's a good advice. And those who are interested in reading The Story of Reality, How the World Began, the link is in the description. You can order the book, or also you can go to the str.org to watch free resources available on their website. So, sir, it was wonderful to have you here, and you wonderfully answered some of the questions which I asked. And I think those are really needed in this time, and for the people, those who are viewers. So thank you so much for your availability.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome.